This episode of Bright Hearth is brought to you by Indigo Sundry Soap Company, Squirrelly Joe's Coffee, Backwards Planning Financial, Live Oak Integrative Health, A Well-Worn Story, Grey Toad Tallow, Reformation Heritage Books, and by our supporters at patreon.com.
An excellent wife who can find. She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ship of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hand to the distaff, and her hand holds the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. Proverbs 31:10 through 31.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bright Hearth, and we're glad that you're here to join us in this episode to talk about some of the virtues that go into vocational fruitfulness for the Christian household. And we're going to be doing that looking through the lens of something that fell into our laps last week that was important and good work, but not easy work. It was not work that came without cost to both of us individually and to our household. And even radiating out from our household, there was cost. So we're going to talk about what that was, how we worked through it, how the Lord blessed us both with and through this hard, good work. And then we'll be taking up a listener question about natural medicine and home birth resources. And I'll just remind you here that we do have a Send Us a Text feature here on on virtually all the podcast channels in the description. You can tap that link, send us a text. We're not able to reply, so just remember that. We're not being rude. It doesn't let us respond to them, but it does put them in an inbox for us. So you can send in your comments, even if you just want to say some comment, or if you'd like to ask a question. We'll be trying to take at least one of your questions up most episodes. But before we do that, babe, how are pregnant Americans doing today?
We are laboring on Labor Day.
We are laboring on Labor Day. That's right.
Yes.
How many children have you now incubated in your womb? What are we up to?
I think just 7.
7. 7. Wow. Boy or girl, what do you think?
Winnie said, I think it's a gwale because I like gwales.
I love how all of our kids go through a phase of calling girls gwales. Like
Gwales.
G-W-A-I-L-S, like quails.
But gwales.
But gwales.
So that was Winnie. She was helping me fold laundry, and she said, I think it's a gwale because I like gwales.
I like gwales, too.
That's cute.
That would get us closer to even. We'd be 3 and 4. Because otherwise, we're going to be 5 and 2 with boys. Although, if we go 5 and 2 with boys, it will increase the likelihood of the family name continuing to many generations.
That's true.
As we'll get more Sauvés.
And probably more boys after that.
Boy, wow, that's true.
Yeah.
So, man, well, I'm excited for the little person that we co-created that is knitting together in there. How big is this little baby right now?
I haven't
Like a
looked.
Hershey Kiss?
I haven't looked. That was a few weeks ago, so
weeks
bigger
ago?
now. They're remember I said they like double in size for the next few weeks.
Oh, that's right. So like maybe up to a kiwi.
Maybe. I don't know.
Like a small
I need
fruit.
to look.
Some kind of small to medium fruit.
I try not to pay too close of attention because it makes a long pregnancy even longer.
Yeah, when you're like, how long is it? It's like watching the watching
I don't
the clock.
know. I just forgot.
A watched baby is never born.
That's what it feels like.
Excellent. Well, we are, like I said, we're going to be talking about something that fell into our laps last week as a family, very last minute. And some of you probably know what I'm talking about. But it gave, I think, a really good opportunity to get basically a window, a porthole into how, as a household, we think about some of these things and to talk through the cost of vocational fruitfulness. All of us have vocations, both men and women. We have vocations that the Lord has given us. They vary widely across time and place and seasons of life. Some of you are young and single, and you have vocations. Maybe you're in school. Maybe you're working several jobs. Maybe you just got into the beginning of your career. Maybe you're still in your parents' household, and you have lots of vocations that you have to undertake. There are duties God gave you there. Maybe you're in the same place we are, and you've been married for some time, and you're homeschooling or Christian educating, and you've got a lot of good work at home with a productive Christian household, ladies, where you're canning food with a baby underfoot, and you're feeding a bunch of people and educating them and working on all this. And husbands, you're working a job or 2 or 3 jobs, and you're working very hard to provide for your family and aim to leave a legacy for your kids. Some of you are pastors. Some of you are grandparents. There's just a huge range of people who we know listen to this show. And all of you have different vocations. But all of us, when we undertake those vocations, when we put our hand to them, all of us find that there are costs associated with doing them well. None of them come without pain. None of them come without strength being given away and poured out. None of them come without time being spent. And with all of that strength and all that time, there's an opportunity cost. Anytime you use strength to do something, you're not using that strength to do something else. Anytime you use an hour to do something, you're using that hour to do that, and you can't use that hour to do something else at the same time. So we wanted to talk about how we think as a household about vocational fruitfulness, especially when it comes to the costs that are associated with it, and how to think through those things and pursue virtue. This season talking about truth, goodness, and beauty. And this is kind of a goodness episode, looking at the virtues that go into fruitful vocation, or at least some of them, in the Christian household. So that said, why don't we talk about the setting a little bit?
What was the setting?
The setting was a flurry of emails, phone calls, textual messages, which I received, was it Tuesday?
I'm pretty sure it was Tuesday, yeah.
I think it was Tuesday. They started coming in that morning. Basically, I don't really look at my text messages that much till I get to work. I try to respond to them because it's easier to type responses than tap them out, and I usually have a good number to respond to from the night, basically from when I go to sleep until I get to my desk in the morning. And I see a bunch come in that are related to this completely unlooked for opportunity, which was, hey, Brian, can you go fly to Washington, D.C., and then drive into West Virginia and go on Tim Pool's podcast video. Do you call it a podcast if it's on YouTube or if it's a vidya?
Does he not have an actual podcast?
I think he does too. I'm not asking the right person.
Yeah, that is true.
I think they're still called a podcast. Whatever. It's like a live show that they produce as a YouTube video. It's live on X, Twitter, and it's live on, and then it goes to a podcast. And Tim Pool, some of you are probably like, yeah, Tim Pool. And I'm not. I've never listened to him.
We didn't know who it was.
I kind of learned a little bit about him since the invitation came in. He's like a professional skater.
I figured out he was probably pretty cool when I was on House and Habit later that night, and he popped up.
Oh, okay.
Through RFK Jr.'s account, though.
Oh, interesting.
That's where I was like, oh, this is bigger than I thought it was.
Is House and Habit that political thing?
I like following her. I mean, obviously she's more liberal than I am in some ways, but I do think she's a pretty neutral party in regards to reporting.
Gotcha. So Tim showed up on that
that night. Yeah, I can't remember. Oh, it was because of the Trump stuff. That's what it was.
Gotcha. Yeah. Tim Pool does a lot of, he was a professional skater. Then he made a big show called Timcast where he talks about, frankly, like a huge variety of things.
Yeah.
Technology, politics, culture, all sorts of things, controversial things. And he often has guests on. He does a couple shows. So one of them is called The Culture War, where it's not that old. Timcast is huge, and everything he does is pretty big. Like millions of people listen to it. And The Culture War is a format where they bring in multiple guests that don't necessarily agree on something for the most part, and then they have a conversation about it. That can be everywhere. Some of them I watched to kind of get us feel for what the show is going to be like, were very much adversarial, like debates where people were yelling at each other. And then
Like,
some of them are calm.
What were some of the...
He had like a communist on with like a non-guy
Oh,
and
dear.
With a normal person, and they
Okay.
were arguing. And the old guy was the non-communist, was not a communist, and the young guy was a communist. And the old guy was just clearly like irate.
Oh, really?
Well, because the young guy's an idiot. He's a communist.
Interesting. Yeah.
Communists are not even people. So
Interesting.
they did that show anyway. So the invitation comes in. They say, "Hey, look, we need a guest this week. We are wanting to talk about simulation theory. We have an expert who's an expert on AI, safety, artificial intelligence, and the idea that we live in a simulation. He believes that, and apparently Tim kind of either does or entertains the idea. And then we wanted a Christian to come on. And the lady that books the show, her name's Lisa. She had been working with Ben Garrett and I a little bit to. We talked about Haunted Cosmos and maybe doing something with him at some point. So I kind of vaguely knew about him, but they needed someone last minute. And it was totally like a off the wall, hey, do you want to come out on Friday? And you have to fly here because we only do them in person.
On Thursday.
On Thursday, you'd have
Come
to
out
leave.
Thursday night, interview Friday morning, and fly home Friday afternoon.
Yes. And it's like over a 2-hour show often. So very wide ranging. There's basically nothing to hide behind. And so at first I was thinking like, there's no way I should do this. I'm kind of leaning towards no, but I figured I'd ask Eric and Lexy and we'd talk about it and go like, what should we do? So I asked Eric, I basically said, okay, 2 questions. Like number 1, should I do this? Is this even something that makes sense for me to do? Could I conceivably do a good job at this? And would it be worthwhile and not just bring shame upon our family and the name of Christ for going on a show and bombing it? And then 2, like, could we even work that out between pastoral duties and everything? And of course, Eric immediately responded within like 10 seconds.
You have to go. Brian's coming.
He's like, you can do this. You should do this. The Lord put this in your hand. You've got to do it. And so I said, all right, I'm going to talk to Lexy because this is not. We have 6 kids already, and Lexi's pregnant.
And you're traveling 2 other times.
And I had like
next
on schedule already.
4 weeks.
2 things that I'm traveling briefly for, and it was like, okay.
You don't like to travel.
I hate traveling. I like being at home. I don't even like not being at home after 8 p.m. I'm just like the idea of somebody who goes around and does this sort of thing all the time. It would be a personal hell for me. I would absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
Hey friends, let's talk about Gray Toad Tallow. They're a family-owned small business dedicated to making products that nourish your skin with the purest, most wholesome ingredients. For centuries, people have experienced the moisturizing and healing properties of tallow, and Gray Toad Tallow is committed to sharing these benefits their family has experienced with you. Besides their commitment to offering you a healthy skincare option for your family, Gray Toad Tallow's desire is to remain affordable and accessible to be a blessing to others. For more information and to try a balm sample pack, visit graytoadtallow.com. That link will be in the description along with this code, which we would urge you not to forget to use for 15% off your order. That code is all caps, BRIGHT15, BRIGHT15 for 15% off your order, and we truly appreciate your business. Are you tired of not feeling well and of having your doctor treat your symptoms without taking the time to investigate what's really going on? Rebecca Belch owns Live Oak Integrative Health and is passionate about helping women and families achieve the health that God designed our bodies to have. She has been a critical care and labor and delivery nurse for 20 years and is a licensed practitioner of functional medicine. Her goal is to address the root causes of dysfunction in your body and to help you give your body what it needs so that you can create a legacy of health that extends to your children and grandchildren. She provides a wide range of testing options to uncover your underlying health issues, such as fatigue, weight gain, and gut problems. She then works with you to develop a plan that focuses on nutrition, hormone balance, and long-term habits to promote enduring health. She also specializes in health for women who will become or currently are pregnant. This time is often overlooked and is the most important window to create generational health. Contact her right now for a $50 discount on any of her service options. You can do this on her website, liveoakintegrativehealth.com, and that link will be in the description for you. If you have a young family like me, you work hard every day to ensure you care for your wife and kids. Providing for a young family is challenging, with rising costs, and it doesn't look like things are going to change in the future. Maybe you've thought like I have, I wish I'd started investing years ago. My family would be in a better financial position. As they say about trees, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Don't let the benefit of time go to waste on your financial planning for retirement or inheritance for your generations. Joe Garrissey with Backwards Planning Financial has been working with us to make the best plan for our family. He's a Christian who works with one of the largest and most trusted financial service companies in the world. He's been helping Lexi and I work towards our financial goals and helps us navigate the complexities of the markets. Whether you have millions in assets or you're just starting to invest, Joe Garrissey can help you reach your goals to grow the kingdom and leave a good legacy for your generations. Visit backwardspanningfinancial.com, that's backwardspanningfinancial.com, or call 615-767-2555 to speak with Joe to prepare for the future. The testimonials presented may not be representative of the experience of other clients and are not a guarantee of future performance or success. Want to start reading the Puritans but don't know where to begin? Puritan Treasures for Today from Reformation Heritage Books makes the riches of these godly writers of old accessible for the modern reader. With updated language and helpful introductions, these classic works from John Owens, Jeremiah Burroughs, and more are the perfect starting point for the curious reader. Learn more about the Puritan Treasures for Today at heritagebooks.org/Puritan Treasures and use code Bright Hearth for 10% off your order. That's Bright Hearth, all lowercase, no spaces, for 10% off your order. So I ask, and I know that there's a cost to these things. Even if they're good opportunities, there's lots of, like, sometimes in life you'll have opportunities to do 10 different things, and all of them could make an argument that they're all good.
And you genuinely don't say yes to everything.
No.
So yeah, this one did feel more specific. Like, no, you probably should do that.
So I called Lexi, and I was expecting her to be like, not Lexi's not rude or anything like that, but I was expecting her to be like, if you really think you should, then we'll figure it out. But you were much more like, come back with your shielder on it.
Well, it was the very specific sort of thing that I was thinking back to high school, Brian. And I was like, no, this is like tailor-made for you. Even when I told my mom, she was like, oh yeah, he can't not say no to that. Like, and same things that my mom said that I was thinking. And that, like, the elders know you very well. People know you. You're very well-spoken, clearly. But Brian won the state championship in high school for debate, but he had graduated high school at that point and turned down traveling across the nation to, I don't even know if you remember this.
Vaguely.
You had graduated and you were working full time and you did not want to travel. So you actually, again, you didn't want to travel.
I had to save up. I had to save up money to, like, buy you a house.
You had to. You turned down traveling to compete in the nation for nationals because you wanted to work instead. So
work at a coffee shop and make
I just knew it was
hour.
totally up your alley. I knew the content specifically was up your alley. I knew it was going to be a good opportunity. And it literally, like, there was no reason schedule-wise for us to say no because it was so quick. Your mom was coming over already, essentially. My mom was coming over. It was a no-brainer in my mind.
Yeah, it was, I don't do this as much now, but I used to be, like, years ago, probably 5+ years ago, I would read very widely in apologetics, philosophy, very much interested in that. Debate, rhetoric, that was kind of something that I was interested in a concentrated way for different portions of my life. Watched a lot of debates.
Yeah.
So in the back of my mind, it's not something I'm actively, like, Jeff Durbin is always going and debating and doing this sort of thing. So it's not something I do now that much, but there's like a room in my mind.
Yeah, there's a part of you
that's dusty. The
Yeah.
door hinge creaks a little bit. That occasionally I still go in, and it's apologetic and more philosophical. So, yeah, Lexi was like, basically, you need to do this. So I hung up the phone, and this was all in the space of like 10 minutes, and then I responded, and then Michael Foster texted too. Pretty much in the like 3 people were all trying, talking in different text messages, and he knows Lisa, who books the show, and said, "Hey, I think Brian would be great for this. You gotta have him on." And so then I responded and said, "Yep, let's figure it out. Let's get flights booked and figure details and that sort of thing." And in my mind, I was thinking, like, you always underestimate the cost of something at first. I was thinking, yeah, I'll be able to fly out probably 5 o'clock on a Thursday, be there by 9.
Be there in the evening.
Just, go and then come.
Won't have to wait
home.
in the airport till midnight with a cup of ramen for dinner.
Yeah. But then, of course, like, the only flights that work have connecting flights, so it's more like leave at 10 in the morning, get there at 9 o'clock their time, which, because of lightning storms, turned into
delayed.
11 o'clock their time, and then an hour plus drive for an Uber, getting in Thursday night at, now Friday morning at midnight, having eaten in like 8 hours, which for me, that's a long time, guys. Look at me. And I was like, at the hotel desk, just looking around like, is there any food in this whole place? And I found a cup of ramen and some honey roasted peanuts. And I think I paid $8 for those 2 items.
Oh my gosh.
They'd probably been sitting there for like 6 years.
MSG.
Yeah, I just
up
like
the wazoo.
at almost 1 in the morning in my hotel room,
sad.
I'm like microwaving a cup of noodles. And then I thought, I'm not going to eat again. There's no way I'm going to eat like continental breakfast at this place. It's going to make me feel horrible. So I went into the debate running on a cup of noodles at 1 a.m. And
oh my gosh.
but the cost to our family, obviously a couple days of travel, but also those 2 days then, like Tuesday, Wednesday, I spent at least 10 to 12 hours a day trying to read, prepare. Because it's like, if you're going to go on and imagine being in a stadium with hundreds of thousands of people, or like 80 to 100,000 people sitting there. You don't want to go into that situation and just be an ignoramus.
Yeah, because you didn't know understood the broad implications of this worldview, but you didn't know the details of it as much.
Yeah, I keep abreast of AI a little bit, and I'm interested in it, but I had heard of simulation theory. Elon Musk believes in it. It's been popular. It's been on Lex Friedman, Elon Musk stuff. He's talked about it. Neil deGrasse Tyson, kind of all these techno-futurist, techno-philosophical right wing especially. There's been a lot of conversation about this idea, which, just by the way, in case you're lost, simulation theory is the idea that it's very likely, between like 20 to 50% likely to some people, like the guy that was on the show, 99.9% likely, that we are not actually embodied physical people, but that we are highly advanced artificial intelligence code running on a computer somewhere, simulating a world for different reasons. And so not like the Matrix where your body's plugged into a computer and it's just your mind is like running this thing, but actually where you don't even have a body really anywhere. You're just a simulation. And maybe people are running these simulations as ancestor simulations to simulate evolutionary theory and how it might have played out in different worlds. Maybe it's people doing studies where they wanted to see like what would have happened if, some people say our simulation started in 2016 and they were trying to figure out what would have happened if Donald Trump won instead of Hillary, that kind of thing. So I had to do a lot of reading on this crazy idea and found some really help. Parker Sedekase is a Christian philosophy guy, and he had done some interviews with different thinkers on this, helped point me in a few directions. I talked to him briefly, like at the airport on Thursday, tried to download enough YouTube videos so that I could watch them literally on the plane on the way there. Until that, the whole time I'm like inputting information, trying to make sure I'm prepared for this conversation. So for like the whole week, all of a sudden, that's now what I'm doing, where the Lord is like, here you go, do this thing. opportunity bear witness to hundreds of thousands, maybe million plus people. But you're going to not, the cost is going to be, if you want to do it well, like I could have said yes, done no preparation, showed up, just done my best. And I probably would have done very poorly.
No, you wouldn't have. You would have been fine.
Well, you like me a lot. So
you would have been fine.
But to do it well, to say yes to something, like when your yes is yes, you're actually going to do something. You have to put your strength into it and do it well. You don't want to say yes to 50 things and do them all 1/50th of the way. You want to say yes to the right things and do them with all of your strength that you can give to that thing. Mm-hmm. So the cost for us was, what are some of the costs for our family in saying yes to something like that?
The kids really didn't want you to go this time.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why. You haven't traveled in a while, so they really didn't want you to go, though. So, yeah, I think that always just strikes me how much the little kids really do need you around and want you around.
Yeah.
I honestly wasn't nervous. I think it was just the Lord this time, because I've been so tired and still pretty sick that I could have been nervous about it, but I wasn't. Mm-hmm. And I felt okay most of the time. But that is always a thing, is like, there are 6 of them.
Yep.
There is a lot of work. There's no other adult to like help run interference.
Yes.
Yeah, it's more of a morale thing for me, I feel like, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And just having to really, like, now I'm looking at the rest of the month just knowing, like, okay, there's not really going to be a break until October for me, especially with school starting. It is what it is. I'm cooking more when school's going in. I have more laundry when school's going on. The weird thing about older kids, too, I learned this last year, and it's still the same this year, is now our older boys have, like, real duties in vocation as they're becoming like teenagers, where I have to help them do their duties in addition to my duties. So now Ari has had some jobs in the neighborhood that I've been helping him do. So it's a really busy schedule of like, you're just not here to help with that, you know?
Yep.
So
even if it's for a few days, even if it's like, when I'm here for a couple days before it's increased, I'm at night.
It feels exponential.
Yeah.
Like one thing, I was not feeling well enough to get our bathroom cleaned, and that becomes exponential so fast. Then it's the laundry that sits, and so it's not necessarily, I'm realizing it's not necessarily the cost while you were gone, though that is there. It's also how long it takes me to catch up on anything.
Yeah. So one thing that would have happened doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Or doesn't happen, doesn't get done.
Yeah.
And that adds and makes the next thing harder to do, and the next thing harder to do.
Correct. That's a good, there you go. You're describing it better.
Dig your way back out to get to baseline back again.
And I know, because a couple years ago when you were traveling, I actually ended up on bed rest while you were gone. And ever since then, I've had to have this rule for myself of like, when Brian's gone, you just can't push through it. You have to go to sleep, because you don't know who's going to end up sick in the middle of the night. You don't know, like if I'm pregnant, like I am now, you don't know how your body is going to handle the stress, whether or not like you're telling yourself to just tough it out, that your body is weak and fragile and getting older. So there are some things that I feel like maybe this isn't the case. I feel like I'm better at letting those things go, but it still is hard. It's still a lot of work, though, to catch up on the other side.
Yeah, this is something I think we've both learned how to do much better than we did at first, just like anything else. That, like military families, when husband's gone for 2 weeks at a time for a training, and then sometimes 3 months or 6 months or more for a deployment, the first ones are much like you hopefully figure out a rhythm. There's always a cost. It's always difficult, but you figure out a rhythm.
Yeah.
These kinds of things.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I really did start thinking about it vocationally. Like, okay, if this is his vocation and it's going to be this way for the foreseeable future, which it is, that means I have to get good at this. I can't be stressed out every single time, have no plan, have nothing prepared for the kids. I can't be that person. It has to become a normal part of our life that I am prepared for, and I know it's part of my job too. Yeah,
and it's not like we're just using an example here, and some of you are like, oh, that's silly, being gone for a couple days. Like, my husband's a traveling salesman. Yeah. He's gone 2 weeks. I'm not saying this is the hardest thing in the world. This is just one example we're trying to give. everybody has these sorts of things in their vocation.
But I have seen other women where their husband has a vocation change and they don't adapt to it very well.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to realize a couple years ago. Like, I wasn't adapting to it because not necessarily because I was resistant to it, but more of like, oh, I'm just not realizing what the Lord is doing and I'm like behind on things. Does that make sense?
Because sometimes things happen gradually.
Yeah.
For me, it's not like I took a job that was different.
Correct.
These things just started to
pile
these
up.
Opportunities happen, came up with different vocational things.
And having friends that, like one of my good friends, her husband was virtually gone 6 months out of the year for probably well over a decade of their marriage.
Yeah.
And that helped me, even talking to her, being like, no, it is hard when they're gone. Mm-hmm. And not belittling like, oh, he's only gone for the weekend. Like saying like, no, it is hard. Do what you can. Yep. It's not ideal, but here's what has helped me. Stuff like that, having older, moms in my life to talk to. It definitely helped me. Like, okay, this is part of his job now. I'm going to be the wife that isn't going to freak out about this.
And some of the time you have, maybe it's your husband's in a season where you've just come home full-time with the kids. He's trying to make more money. There's overtime at work that's really good financially but costly. And so all of a sudden he's home at 6:30 a lot instead of 5:30, or he's home, some nights he's gone to a second job, or there's different things like that are good, and you can recognize logically that they're good and that he should be doing them. I've counseled young married couples a lot over the years and looked at budgets with them and said, hey, you currently don't make enough money. You're doing a good job. You're on the right track. You will be making enough money when you are 5 years into your career or you keep working hard. But right now, you actually just need to go drive for Uber, or you're going to have to go do something like that 2 nights a week. And it's not just that the husband has to go do that. The wife now has a harder job too. Yes. And both of them, I think, have temptations with that that are like, both of them can be tempted to think, I have the short end of the stick. Mm-hmm. And so what are some of the temptations you think? I'll speak, maybe I can talk to the husband side, but what do you think some of the temptations for a wife in these situations? She might be tempted to sin or be discouraged or otherwise not handle it well.
I think 2 big ones when I've been counseling the wives in these situations. 2 big ones are like, he doesn't love me. She just feels really overlooked. And I bet he can't wait to go to work tonight so he doesn't have to put the kids in bed.
Yes. Like starting to believe things that probably aren't true about him. He wants
to go drive around in the heat and drive people to their date nights or whatever.
Can't wait.
Date nights. Hopefully you're not taking Uber on a date night, but
and it's whatever. Because there's different challenges with the different vocations where there are challenges to his vocation out there, whatever his job is. There's aspects of it that she doesn't know because she doesn't do it. But she's tempted to think he's got it flipping easy. Kids are hard.
Part of what helped me when you left too was that you and I just got back from Grace Agenda, and I got sick.
Yeah,
we had to leave early because I got sick, and I still don't know what it was. There was a stomach bug going through. We also had no homemade food. I was very sick though.
Yeah,
and I was like, he's got the short end of the stick. He's got to go eat all those seed oils. I don't.
Which is why I just didn't eat anything.
But I know you don't like to travel, and I know how bad I feel when traveling. So we're just
we are home,
I don't know.
home people. It's not like a marriage where one guy's like, let's go to the party, babe. And she's like, no, let's stay home. We're both like, it's 7:45. We're still out. Why did we choose this? What's happening here?
And now that our kids are that way, we're like, wait, why are our kids this way? This is so hard to be out. We're like, oh yeah, we did it to them. I don't know. I think some of it is just God-given disposition, but
totally. So you think there's a ditch where she can start to think and sometimes people sin. Like maybe he is sometimes sinfully thinking, oh man,
he's
work
not pitching
is easier.
in. He's not helping to make her job easier at night. Yeah.
He can actually sin. The point isn't that it's all made up. No, he can actually sin. But the key point that she has to remember, and this is true about all the temptations in marriage, or most of them in marriage, to sin against our spouse, is that we shouldn't just ask, well, but what if they really are doing the thing that we're worried about? And then go and make them correct. Like, if you're thinking, you're worried, he doesn't want to be here, he'd rather be at work, and then every minute he's there, you're rude to him and
acting
anxious.
as if that's true, yeah.
He won't want to be there because you're being rude and anxious and fussy at him. And so, of course, he's like, well, driving for Uber's terrible, but at least they're not fussing at me constantly. They just get in the car and I drive them places. Like, that's much easier to. So you can always, like, ladies can always shoot themselves in the foot by basically creating a self-fulfilling prophecy through their sinful reaction to either stresses or even sins of their husband, just normal stresses or sins. So she has to be careful of that. And on the other hand, he really does need to be aware of the cost, the genuine cost to her.
Yeah.
And both people need to have eyes fixed not on how bad their thing is and how much they have to fuss about, but they need to keep their eyes fixed on, wow, that is hard for her.
Yes.
And that is hard for him. And when you both do that and you sympathize with one another and you love one another, you can get through hard seasons or difficult vocations.
I always think it's funny when we're like accused of being hyper patriarchal, because there's definitely been times when I have come back to you after counseling a wife where I'm like, this husband has unrealistic expectations. Am I crazy? And you'll say, no, he probably does.
Yeah.
And in those situations, all I can think is like, the husband actually doesn't value her work because he's demanding way too much because he doesn't realize how hard it is.
Yeah, sometimes it's because the husband is inexperienced.
Yes.
And he's trying to lead well, but he's underestimating like how far a dollar can go in a budget, and how, if you want your wife to buy everything organic, I think to give her a certain amount of dollars, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. There's also just been the type of men that are hyper patriarchal too, that don't understand humans. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a male sin. It's a common male. It's a sin of superiors. So you see in Westminster Larger Catechism, in like 120 to 130. It's at the end of Zach Garris's book. Talks about the sins of superiors, and one of them is vexing those under you by not adequately understanding their frame and their duties. So if you're demand, like, oh, you get home and there's something out of order, or there's dinner's not ready at the right time, and like there's a fine line here where sometimes a husband needs to say, how can I help you, and how can we figure out how to have, if dinner's never on time ever once, or 6 out of 7 nights, it's like you come home and everything's chaos. Well, some of that's like skill and management, but some of the time husbands can have way too high of expectations, be harsh. All of those sins of superiors can come out, and the husband then needs to recognize, am I being a perfectionist?
Mm-hmm.
Am I being rude to, like, frankly, am I being rude to my wife? Would I want to work for me?
Mm-hmm.
And if you wouldn't want to work for you, then it's the golden rule. You need to treat others the way you would want to be treated. So treat your wife the way you would want to be treated by a superior if you were in that situation. I think another, on the husband side, some of the, with these sorts of vocation things where they take from work, there genuinely is, on the other hand, such thing as like the cat's in the cradle, where you're genuinely robbing your home for the sake of the vocation. You're not taking calculated costs and undertaking them with wisdom, but you're actually just throwing all of your strength into the vocation and not throwing your strength adequately into your home.
Mm-hmm.
And that really does set your children up to be provoked to wrath.
Yeah.
And it sets your wife up to be unloved.
I was going to say, too, I think is it in Ephesians where the husband is to nourish and cherish his wife?
Exactly, yep.
Like, some of it is a husband really doesn't understand. You can't just keep demanding more and more alone time of your wife. You can't just, like, pick up another project at work. You can't just do that if you're not making sure she's nourished in the not just minimum, but, like, to a point where she can joyfully overflow and be prepared to help you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I really think it's like, that's not just talking spiritually. I think that physically is, does your wife have enough time to recover from sleep when you've been gone for 2 weeks at a time? Or does she ever see you? Does she like you? She might not even like you because she doesn't see you. And that's your fault. Like, you don't have to say yes to every single thing.
Yeah.
And I think this can be a big danger for guys that have owned their own businesses.
Totally. Yep. Yeah, that's where the temptation often lands.
Because they see like, oh, he can talk to so-and-so on the phone all night, but he can't talk to me. Yeah, picks up another task and it's easier to see this on the outside. I feel like I can see the dynamic when I'm counseling someone. I'm like, this is what's going on. And I don't tell the wife that ever, but I do help her see like, okay, you're not in sin for wanting a little more sleep.
Right. Yeah.
Like, let's help you constructively talk to your husband about this. And I'll give you examples of how I would try to be self-controlled about it and not overly emotional about it. But it's okay for you to ask, I think, that he doesn't take another project for the next 6 months.
Are you a Christian struggling to find companies that align with your values and beliefs? Squirrelly Joe's has you covered for all your coffee needs. All their coffee is hand-selected and roasted fresh every day by a family of fellow believers. Try them out and you'll savor exceptional coffee while knowing that your investment supports a company committed to following God's teachings and upholding truth and righteousness, ensuring your hard-earned money contributes to the growth of God's kingdom. Stop giving your hard-earned dollars to pagans who support evil. We have a fantastic offer for our listeners. Your first bag of coffee is free. All you have to do is cover the shipping. So head over to squirrellyjoes.com/bright, that link's in the description, to claim your free bag of coffee. Here at Bright Hearth, we're all about helping you not turn into a girl if you're a boy, or into a boy if you're a girl. You know what might be doing that to you? The soap in your shower. And so we are pleased to introduce you to IndigoSundrySoap.com, link in the description, of course, who can provide you with soaps and more without any of the nasty stuff. And because they love you, they're giving you a discount code, guys. So use code, all caps, Bright Hearth for 10% off your whole order. Support this great Christian company and support Bright Hearth Podcast at the same time. Check them out at IndigoSundrySoap.com. And of course, that link is in the description. Here at Bright Hearth, we love to support Christian family businesses that are doing great work, which is why we're so happy to commend to you A Well-Worn Story. A Well-Worn Story is a sewing studio based in New Glarus, Wisconsin, and they're making handcrafted leather and canvas goods. It's run by a husband and wife team, and they focus on making beautiful products from natural, high-quality materials that only get better with age, telling your unique story. Made in rural America, this Christian family business makes high-quality handcrafted leather and canvas bags, belts, and wallets, and these are heirloom quality, stuff that you can hand down to your next generation. You can order online at www.awellwornstory.com and use the discount code BRIGHTHEARTH, all caps, no spaces, to save 10% on any order. It's okay, and this is why I recommend, again, that husbands and wives you need open lines. If you look back, especially husbands need to think about this. If you look back over the last 3 months and you've never talked in those 3 months about any of this stuff with your spouse, or you're constantly saying yes to things without consulting your spouse, you're probably, I'm not saying guaranteed, because maybe you're wise and you actually have a good handle on things and you're not talking about it because things are going well. That's a possibility. But some of the time you haven't talked about it because you're not thinking about it enough. And maybe your wife is actually being quiet and gentle and kind.
She's doing what she should be doing.
But you're not adequately taking the time to do a self-check. Wait, am I doing a good job at this? Maybe you're killing it in your vocation, but you're getting a C- at home.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually taking the time to ask your wife, how are things going? It is a temptation when you own your own business because you can always do more. It's so difficult because pastors have a similar thing where they don't own their own business, but it's a similar thing where someone could always be shepherded. You could always do one more thing. You could always
Yeah, there's no true time card.
No, I mean, there's absolutely not. Like, you just, I know there are some pastors who do it because it's an inside job. They don't have to work with their hands and they can like put 30 hours a week in. And like, I know that exists.
They don't actually pastor though.
But most of the pastors I know work 60 hours a week. I mean, I can't think of a time in my life since I started working that I wasn't working 60 hours at least a week between everything. And that's just normal. Like, that's a normal kind of thing. But if you're not being intentional about nourishing and cherishing your wife, if you're not like cheerful, and if you're not sweet to your wife, if you're not paying attention to her, if you're not talking to her, if you're not letting her know that she's the object of your affection, then it's really easy and likely that you're going to end up in a situation where she's resenting you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's everybody's miserable at that point.
Yeah.
Nobody's happy. It's way harder for her to respect you. And then it's going to be a self-fulfilling thing. It's going to cycle down where she's going to be frustrated with you.
Usually justifies her own sin.
Yes.
Which enables her further to walk down that path.
Of not liking you.
Of lots of things, I feel like.
And all the way to adultery. And, you see how this can happen in both directions.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, it's just, they're simple practices that...
They really are.
They just, have to happen. So I think husbands need to be encouraged, like, feedback from your wife. Make sure you're consulting her.
I think a lot of this just comes back to, like, weekly rhythms.
Yeah.
Do you have a good rhythm of, people being in your home, but not being in your home too much? Taking a Sabbath, like actually practicing the Sabbath. Does your wife have good routines to do the basics? Are the toilets clean? Is the laundry done? Is dinner made? Like those basics, because I think that helps you assess when you're doing too much or too little.
And for the self-employed guy, the guy who owns his own business, or the pastor, one of the things that is a practical step to help with this is that you have to be able to recognize, and sometimes this takes coaching from people who are further down the line in an industry than you are. You need coaching sometimes on, when do I need to hire somebody? When do I need to stop doing it all by myself and start hiring somebody? When do I need to do that calculation of, could I hire somebody to do this thing that takes 10 hours a week of my time? They could do it 80% as good as me day one and get to maybe 90 or 100% even in 6 months. The business can afford it. It would help us grow. I can focus on stuff in the business only I can do. And then over time, in the pastorate, am I delegating? Am I raising up deacons? Am I spending the time in the front end to develop leaders so that people genuinely can be shepherded and taken care of well, but not only by me? That's really healthy. Like in my church, immediately too, like look, the household side we've talked about. For this thing with Tim Pool, it also looked like all of those same conversations happened in the elder team, where I'm like, okay, guys, if I do this, here's the cost. I'm probably not going to be able to prepare the sermon adequately this week. So one of our pastoral candidates, Ben, stepped forward and said, I'll handle that. I will preach this week. Great. And because we've put a lot of work into opportunities and training for Ben, I had confidence that Ben could do it. And actually, I think it was one of the best sermons I've heard. He preached so well.
Yeah, it was great.
I know that Guildsmen and the other pastors, and that we have a lot of men who are helping in the church, so that I am not the guy that if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. Lots of people have their hands on the plow at our church.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of work.
I think women can really overstep this boundary too, because they will have the desire to serve, either genuinely because they're a female, they see a need and they want to meet it, or the opposite, where it's like, I just want to get out of the house. Where I had to learn probably a few years ago, I want to say it was maybe when Cyril was born, that I started to notice you really did not like me gone at night for women's ministry stuff anymore.
No.
It was like 4 was kind of your cap. You needed and wanted me home to help you at night. And my natural proclivity would have been like, there's all these different ways we can teach the women to be productive. Let's just go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And I've had to tell myself a similar thing. Like, it's really normal for people to ask me to host things. And I have to think, like, is there somebody else in the church who could do this? Because I will say yes to the things only I can do for whatever reason. But most of the time now, I just have to say, that has to be handed out to somebody else. I know there's 10 other people who could do that.
And it will be good for them.
Yes.
To get an at-bat
that
and
is
have
the
an
thing.
opportunity.
Yes, because, and for me, it's because I need to be available to you and to the kids when unexpected things come up like this, because I think that's what I wasn't realizing for so long in our family schedule was I was scheduling it to the brim. Yes, we can do this, but then there was no wiggle room when unexpected things would come up.
Yep.
And that's where I had to learn, like, okay, we need to back off even more because those days will inevitably get filled. I mean, even what you and I talked recently about, like 3 nights a week being out of the house or people being in our house.
Yeah.
That's our max. It's pretty normal though for one of those, an additional night to pop up.
It is. It's very normal.
So even though that's our max, the reason that's our max is because there's always unexpected stuff that comes up.
We want to be able to say yes to the 4th night.
Yes.
When it's wise to do so.
Yes.
Or helpful.
Yes.
But that means one night of the week, someone from my parish is in our house.
Yes.
Tonight we've got a family coming over.
And both sides of our extended family are here, which we've, communicated to them multiple times, open door policy. If my mom's coming over and I ask her to cut hair, it means mom and dad are coming over for dinner on Oma's schedule. Not when it's convenient for me. I'm going to try and do it when it's convenient for Oma. So I have to be available and you have to be wise about it. You can just get burnt out really easily.
Yep.
And it's not good for the kids either.
Yeah, it's not good for the kids. And you can see it when we are failing to be restrictive enough with ourselves. It shows up in the kids. When we're not restricting good things we could do instead of the good things that the Lord's actually asking us to do.
Yeah.
Because there's a bigger pile of good works you could do than the good works the Lord has laid in front of you and actually wants you to do. And some of the good works he actually wants you to do, you won't be able to do if you're trying to do 50 other good works he didn't ever ask you to do.
Yeah. And
those can overwhelm. So it's like, this is a hard balance. I mean, it's genuinely hard, and it's easy to think that you're in either direction. Some people genuinely need to hear, like, no, you can do that thing. You can do that hospitality thing. The husband can genuinely go do that other job. He can do it. The family can do it. It's good for you guys. You'll grow. You'll get stronger. Some people err too much in the direction of husbanding their strength instead of being poured out. And then some people fall way in the ditch of workaholism and they're just way too overcommitted. This, I think, is the easier temptation in our day, to be honest, because technology, even something as simple as the car, has made it so easy, it seems, to say yes to things.
I think even the phone.
The telephone and internet.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
we don't need to be on our phone so much.
Yeah. And if you want to listen to that interview, the Tim Pool thing, it's like 2 hours. If that's up your alley, I'll put the link in the description here to the YouTube version. It's also on X and other places, but I'll put that up. Last thing, I wanted to take up a question from a listener. I actually know who this listener is, but not personally, but I know they mentioned who they are. I will make it a little bit anonymous in how I read it here. But Vivian from Missouri asks, she said, I just got married a few weeks ago. I'm reaching out for helpful information about natural medicine and home birth resources. I want to read and grow my knowledge to be able to better serve my family. We plan on having children very soon and thought you might be able to help point us in the right direction. Thank you in advance. So what do you think? The young wife, good family, I know the family, and she's looking to figure out how to be the mistress of her domain and take care of health and and home birth resources and that sort of thing. So anything come to mind that you would recommend reading, listening to, just starting to think through?
If you have older moms in your church with a lot of children, find out who the crunchy ones are. Because once you have a lot of children, you know what things are actually helpful and crunchy and what things don't work and are just gimmicks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because you don't have time or resources to do all of the potential crunchy things.
Correct.
It would be like you would go crazy.
Yeah, so that was really helpful for me, like when I was a lot younger, to just have like 1 or 2 older moms to kind of guide me and be like, this specific thing would help you. So that's like in real life type people. I think for home birth resources, 3 things come to mind. I have read a lot of home birth books. I know hypnobirthing is like out there for some people. I get it.
Uh-huh.
We took the class. We loved the class. I have read the Bradley method as well. I still think hypnobirthing does a better job of explaining physiological birth. That's what I liked about hypnobirthing, was the physiological understanding of birth and how mentally that plays into promoting that going well or going poorly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you can get people who do it really woo-woo and who are like negative about Christianity.
We didn't
like, that's
have
true.
an experience like that.
But the general like idea of, and really the idea is if God made the body to give birth. It's not a medical thing. It's a truly, like, you were designed for it. Yes, there's the curse. Yes, there's sin. All these things are true. But here's how to think about it, what's happening.
Cheerful heart is good medicine applies to the birth process as well. And that helped me see it from a scientific perspective. And yes, I do think it is a scientific perspective. In terms of like safety of home birth, I still love Dr. Mendelssohn's book the most, How to Raise a Healthy Child in Spite of Your Doctor. He has an entire section on home birth in there. I actually didn't read that until after I had had a home birth and was like, wow, this is so cool to know all this information that I didn't know before. I think it's helpful. I read Home Birth on Your Own Terms when I got pregnant in 2020 or 2021, just because I wanted a basic understanding of what happens in worst case scenarios in a home birth. I don't think you necessarily need to read that, but I think it could be helpful for husbands and wives who are uncertain about home birth to just kind of mentally help yourself with that, I guess.
Yeah.
In terms of dealing with anxiety around labor, I'm reading it for a second time now. It's called Redeeming Childbirth, and it is written by a Christian. I absolutely love it. It's so encouraging just to understand, like, there's always joy on the other side of suffering. God uses hardship in pregnancy and labors for a reason. It's just really helpful because it can be scary when things have gone wrong in the past. So I think that is one that, like, I wish every new mom had that book in her hands when she got pregnant. It's by Angie Tolpin. And then I think in terms of just natural medicine in general, I've said so many times before, Dr. Mendelssohn's book, get that one because he's a pediatrician. And the other series that I really like is Rachel Weaver's. I had a pastor's wife when I was trying to get started with this, but didn't want anything woo-woo. She recommended Rachel Weaver's books to me because Rachel Weaver is a Mennonite, and I learned so much from her books, and they were like the springboard into everything else for me. I feel like I don't really learn a ton via podcasts about that stuff. I'm more of a book person, and I kind of feel like you need to be a book person with this because in an emergency, you need to reference a book. You're not going to go find an hour-long podcast and just skip through it. Take notes when you do listen to stuff like that. You will reference that, but you need to be referencing something in print. So I am pro print over podcasts and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's my short answer.
Yeah, that's a great brief answer of a couple starting points for sure. And I think one of the most important was that look for those people in your life too.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have specific questions a lot of the time.
Yeah, there's been stuff where I have been trying to like read a book, research. I don't know what's going on. This is a major problem. And then I'll talk to an older mom who knows me or my child's personality really well. And they're like, this is what's going on. And it has been totally like, that's an answer to prayer.
Yep.
Because you know me specifically, you know them specifically, and you can see into the situation in a way that the book doesn't. So, yeah.
Yeah, people are some of the best resources because they can know you and you can put specific questions to them that you might have about your circumstance. Like Lexi figured out a whole conspiracy unwound.
I didn't figure that out.
In our neighborhood this week.
Wait, our neighborhood?
With the pesticide reaction.
Oh, yes. You know what? If you guys follow me on Twitter, I posted about it Saturday night, and by Sunday, I had basically confirmed what I had said Saturday night about spraying, fogging, mosquitoes, pesticides, polio. It happened. Multiple people have been affected in our church already.
People were having this very specific reaction. Multiple children and people.
Multiple families.
And Lexi was like, that reminds me of this. And she started looking into it, looking at the county's spraying schedule and how they were doing. And it was like, wow, You basically you were
was
like a journalist.
That was a few other women with me, but it was one of those things that I only put it together because I study it regularly.
Yeah, you already had the background.
Didn't I tell you the night before? I literally told you, I'm like, they're spraying. There's going to be outbreaks of something.
And you were right. It was a little spooky, honestly.
It was kind of weird.
Your power.
It's weird because it's annoying that it's that obvious to me now. That's the annoying part
and
about
if you said it in most circles, they'd be like, that's crazy. You're just a conspiracy theorist. You're like, no, this is literally like not difficult to figure out once you know what different things can do to people and how we just like fog our neighborhoods.
Yeah, so that book, I love medical muckraking books. So if you guys have a good recommend, send it my way. But that one I just finished was The Moth and the Iron Lung.
About polio.
Yeah, and it was easy enough of a read that Ari read it in less than 24 hours after me because he loves that kind of stuff too. Yeah. So
really, really interesting. So
yeah, it is.
I think that's about all we've got for this episode, guys. So thanks for listening in. As always, if you like what we do on Bright Hearth and you want to support the project, you can do that at patreon.com/brighthearth and join that Patreon community there. We share short little podcasts. Lexi often does it on very specific homemaking or practical things called In the Kitchen. There's dozens and dozens of them already up that you'd get access to if you'd sign up, as well as the ones that we put out ongoing into the future here. And we appreciate people who do that. That really does help us too. You know, Lexi talked about businesses and owning a business and like the time of that, and New Christendom Press that handles all of our book publishing, podcast, my music, all these different things are part of that publishing house. And it's only because of people like you guys who support us in those ways that we're able to hire the currently like 5 to 10 in any given employees who make sure that we can keep doing this whole thing. And so we appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. And if you'd like to support the show, there's a link to that down in the description. And hey, I just put out a new album of Westminster Shorter Catechism songs. And actually, Ray, who edits this show for us, produced those. He's also a music producer, and he helped produce that album. I think it's the best one yet. We really got into a groove working together. It runs from question 33 to 43, 11 songs, 11 questions in the Westminster Shorter Catechism. So now we're up to through question 43 out of 107, and we chip away at those every single month. That's another example. You know, it's like $400 to $600 a month goes into that project. And it's kind of a labor of love because I don't think it nearly makes that much in terms of royalties to keep it going. So thank you guys for your support of all of that. Check it out. You can catechize your family while you're in the car or while we play it while we clean up from dinner so that the kids are learning their catechism just through these songs. And I also think that this album is musically interesting and fun to listen to, too. It's got banjo and all sorts of stuff in it. So check that out. You can find that under the artist name. It's not my normal music channel, just Brian Sauvé. This one's under the artist name. It's a real mouthful. Westminster Shorter Catechism Songs with Brian Sauvé. If you just go to my normal Brian Sauvé music profiles on Spotify, I do have a playlist that has all of them called Catechism Songs. But yeah, go find that artist. Give it a listen. All of the lyric videos are up on my YouTube channel as well. Under that, it's like a Catechism Songs playlist where you can just turn it on and it will even do a lyric video with the words up to help you learn if you'd like to have something to look at to help and visually reinforce that as well. But thanks, guys. That is out and streaming everywhere. So check it out. Share it with friends. Share this podcast. Share that with your friends if you find it helpful. And again, we appreciate you guys, and we hope to catch you next time on Bright Hearth.